It's technically January 13th, 2011, but this is the video for January 12th. I fell asleep last night before I could make the video, so I'm gonna make it this morning and pretend it's yesterday. First things first, I have to say happy birthday to, even though it's not their birthday anymore, my mom and my roommate Katie. And I'm gonna start off with the book review for the week. I've got 4 books, again, like I had filmed yesterday. It's going to be very similar criteria. You can find more details about that on my blog, which I have a link to down there. I meant to bring all the books home with me, but I forgot. I've only got one of them here, and so I'll start with this one. I've got Barometer Rising by Hugh McLennan. I read it for my Canadian literature class. It's an interesting book. It kind of mixes with a bit of mythology. The main character's name is Penelope. Her love interest goes across seas to World War I to fight and has a long journey home. It kind of plays with that idea a bit for a lot of different reasons. It's set against the backdrop of the Halifax explosion. It's got a historical quality as well. And I quite enjoyed it. I think it would be less successful outside of Canada because it's sort of a very Canadian novel set against the backdrop of Canada's sort of like emerging identity. But for the most part, if you're interested in sort of fictionalized accounts of history, it's a great read. Next I've got The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Read it for my children's lit class. It's a classic, so if you haven't already read it, you probably should. It's definitely got a lot of interesting concepts in it, lots of alternate ways of reading it, not necessarily the ways that Grahame himself intended you to read it, but you can look at issues like the homosocial aspect of it, you know, a bunch of male characters living together in an idyllic summertime picnic boat ride world and stuff like that. You can look at racism for the fact that every single character except one is a mammal, and the one that isn't is the one who's constantly getting in trouble and doesn't really fit in. You can look at sort of industrialization aspects with the whole motor car and things like that. But it's definitely, if you haven't read it, a must read just for the sake of its status as a classic. Third, I looked at another book for Canadian literature, The Lamp at Noon and Other Stories by Sinclair Ross. It's a collection of short stories set in the prairies. Prairie literature, it's very depressing, very desolate, very lonely. But the most interesting part about it, I found, and this isn't necessarily a good thing, is the way that he sort of reuses the same characters in different situations over and over again. So you'll always have like the lonely wife and the farmer who works too hard, and then you'll have either a baby or a young man who's trying to sort of exert his independence. And you know, he uses each story for a sort of different reason, but for the most part, I don't know if it would appeal to a mass audience. It's sort of very specialized to understanding Canadian literature or Canadian history, or I suppose agricultural, but it doesn't really have that much to do with practical issues. And finally, I looked at a graphic novel called Agents of Atlas for my film class. It's actually what I'm doing a project on. It's worth 85% of my mark in that class, to sort of go through the process of attempting to adapt it to film. So I'll be probably coming back to it again and again over the next several weeks. It's a very interesting concept. It's sort of built out of these one-off characters from comic books in the 50s, starting in the 50s, ending in the 70s. It's about a group of sort of left behind characters who were never fully picked up, and they get together and solve this big mystery of the Yellow Claw, which is slightly racist, but that's what it's supposed to be. It's very interesting, very action-oriented, not so deep. The whole, you know, big concept behind it is this racism issue that sort of got put to rest after World War II, maybe a bit later. Sort of re-emerged with Vietnam, but for the most part, it's not as relevant now. Well, it was published in originally 2006, not really as relevant, but sort of like the stereotypical portrayal of the Asian villain is about as close to a overarching concept as you can get in that. But it is very good. It's very action oriented. You're definitely going to get some enjoyment out of it if you pick it up. That's it for the book reviews. Like I said, full reviews over on my blog. So I'm going to talk about the day. Started off as usual, went to school early, did some reading, went to class. Then after class I went with Caitlin to South Keys, where for the third day in a row I got fast food. I'll work on that. I went into Walmart, went into Chapters, and I didn't buy anything, but it's not really as much of an accomplishment as it sounds like, because I did order some stuff online a couple days ago. I got my first thing, which you'll see a review for sometime in the next couple of weeks. I just got it today. It's Kill Shakespeare, a graphic novel where Shakespeare's heroes and villains face off against each other from different stories, and they're all trying to find this mysterious sorcerer to fight for their side. I went back and I went to my film class where something interesting happened. I quite enjoyed it, at least, and I know that a couple of viewers will find this relevant. We watched a clip of the pilot for Smallville, which features an actress named Sarah Jane Redmond, who happens to be one of my mom's best friends from when she was growing up, sister. So I just find it interesting how it's sort of come full circle from my mom's childhood to my education, all being influenced by one person. I know it's sort of corny and all that, but I found it interesting. Afterwards we went to a restaurant called Dunn's Diner in the market in Ottawa to celebrate Katie's birthday, which was fun. I had a big breakfast. I'm a fan of ordering breakfasts at diners. Went home, fell asleep before I could make this video, and so I'm making it now. That's about it.